Welcome to Connect to Joy. Your host, Carol DeChaine, is an intuitive spiritual guide for practical matters and Marconic multidimensional energy practitioner. Her quest is to help you realize new possibilities, discover and release what holds you back, and enable you to manifest an inspired life filled with joy. Join us on this journey of transformation. Now, here's your host, Carol DeChaine.
Hello, beautiful spirits. Today, we're going to be talking about empowering yourself and ways to stop the power-draining cycle and to even recognize when it's happening. Let me ask you a question to start. What does being empowered mean to you? While you're thinking about that, let me tell you what it means to me. To me, it means knowing my truth and standing in it and having faith in it. It means feeling strong. Being empowered is a sense of knowingness that what I say and who I am is in alignment with my being. It's a feeling of peace. Being empowered means to me taking dominion over my sovereignty, aligning with my true self. So what does being empowered mean to you? I can tell you what giving away your power means. It means that you don't trust yourself. It means that changing the way you act around certain people because you want to please them, that means that you're giving away your power. Or maybe allowing others' judgments and criticisms and even expectations of you to change the way you feel about yourself and how you live your life. And this includes loved ones. It's not just your boss or your teacher or your parents. Well, they're loved ones too, obviously, but your spouse, your children, everybody. Don't allow their judgments, criticisms, and expectations to change the way you feel about yourself. So today's plan is first we're going to talk about what giving your power away may look like so you know how to recognize it. Then looking at why the world do we do that to ourselves. And then we're going to look at the power draining cycle so you can see that cycle and maybe when you're in the middle of it, you'll be able to stop it in its tracks. Then we're going to look at 5 ways to strengthen your resolve and decision to act. 6 keys to empower yourself. And then look at various different ways that you can take your power back, things you can try so you can see what's right for you. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? So what does it look like? How can you tell if you're giving away your power? This may not be obvious to you. Others may see it more clearly. Perhaps you're playing the blame game. If something goes wrong, it's always somebody else's fault. You may know people like that. It may not be you, but you may know it's always their fault. Not mine, it's theirs. Maybe you think you're the victim, or you know people who do, and say, it's not my fault, it's their fault. And you may say, oh God, they're playing the victim, but you may not realize if you do it. You may say, if only this would happen, then. So you're giving your power away instead of taking dominion over it. And maybe you let everyone else make decisions for you. You might be a people pleaser. You might want people to like you, which we all do. So you don't want to rock the boat, because maybe you're thinking if I stand my ground and I stay in my power, people won't like me. This is in all relationships. You might have it in every single one you have where you don't show people what you're thinking, or you may have it in a specific type of relationship, like authority figures. Or maybe you want to be loved so much that you will change yourself for the person you're dating or you're married to. It's really hard to stay that way for a long time if you ever want to be in your power and have your peace. Say your peace, as my mom used to say. Maybe you just can't say no, and that's what your disempowerment feels like and looks like. You always have to say yes to someone because otherwise they wouldn't like you. They wouldn't stay around you. Maybe you feel like you're treated like a child and no one asks your opinion. They just bulldoze right over you. And maybe that's what your disempowerment looks like. You may feel like you have no choice because everyone else has a say and you don't. Maybe you're just always going with the flow, which doesn't necessarily mean you're giving your power away. It might mean that going with the flow is what feels right to you, but it could mean that going with the flow is letting everybody else have their way. That's a little different, so you have to look at what that means to you. How do you feel about that? If you recognize yourself in some of these, then you may be giving your power away, or maybe you recognize other people that you know always give their power away, and you want to see if this show is right for them to listen to. Either way, listen again to those things to see how they resonate with you and if they're actually something that shows you that you're disempowering yourself. So how do we feel when we give away our power? We might feel like we have no voice. We can't speak up for ourselves. But then again, you might feel unloved because people aren't hearing you. You feel out of control or pushed aside and disrespected. You might even get depressed. You might get angry. You might even feel worried or fearful. It depends on who you are, how this will impact you, and in what area of your life. You might feel helpless or vulnerable. You might feel drained and powerless. There are so many different ways that we feel when we're giving away our power. So if you don't feel good in some way, look at what's causing it. See if this may be the reason. And this always leads to the question, why the heck do we do that? Well, it might seem easier to give away our power because then we don't have to make any decisions for ourselves. Let them decide. Maybe you might feel like, well, then I don't have to put any energy out there. I don't have to tell them, no, you're wrong. This is the way I want to do it. This is who I am. So you go, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to make decisions. I don't have to put out that energy. I don't like conflict. Maybe there'll be conflict if I say what I feel and what I want. And of course, like I said before, it's never your fault. You can blame anybody else you want when it's not you taking the power and being responsible for things. And that's the other thing. You don't have to take responsibility for anything because you're kind of delegating that power to other people, maybe everybody else in your life. And they are the problem, not you. So if you're always saying, hey, it's them, they did it, it's their fault, they're the problem, look at yourself again and see if maybe that's not quite true. Maybe sometimes people do it because they don't know better. They didn't learn any better. And you shouldn't beat yourself up over that. If you were raised in an area where you never were given your power, it was always taken away, you may not know how to safely and perhaps in a way that makes you feel comfortable take your power back. Because confrontations might be the way you end up starting because you don't know how to do it any other way. And standing up for yourself can be kind of difficult if you don't know how to do it. Maybe you give away your power because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. So you let them think one thing and that you're agreeing with them or approving them when, well, to be honest, you don't agree with anything they're saying, but you don't want to say anything. Maybe they even ask about how cute their baby is or what do you think of my outfit or something? If you're a woman, you hear that all the time. What do you think of my new dress? Oh, you can stay in your power and not say something mean, but you can also not have to tell them, oh, you look fabulous. There's ways around that. There's ways that you need to be able to stay in your power while you're saying things to people. Maybe the reason why you give away your power is because you want to avoid criticism from other people. You don't want to have them say something mean to you, so you go, yeah, okay, I'll agree with you. It might just be an old habit that you're into. And sometimes we think we need to be perfect and then blame ourselves for being human. And that's a big one, because being perfect at some piece of our puzzle is true already. We already are everything we need to be, but we don't always allow ourselves to act that way. We don't allow ourselves to be our true self because we have too many fears and worries and anxieties that were layered on top of it. If we didn't, what would a spiritual coach do? That's what I do. Another reason why we may give our power away is that we just don't love ourselves enough. We don't respect ourselves enough to put our being first. We let everybody else be first. And if we get our buttons pushed and overreact, people may pull away or say, oh, I don't like you. I don't want you in my life. And that's a scary thing. So therefore, we don't want to allow them to be there, to say things to them that maybe we aren't sure they'll take well. So we just let things be. And in that way, sometimes we give up our power. We do things that aren't necessarily good for us or that make us feel good about what's going on with ourselves. So now we're going to talk about the power draining cycle. We've already talked about why we do this, why we give away our power, how we feel when we do it. And now we're going to look at actually what the power draining cycle is so that we know when we see it, what's going on. So first, what happens is you're faced with a person, a decision, or a situation. And you go, okay, now what do I do? Here we are. Do we feel strongly about what's going on? Or do we not care much? Normally we have some sort of opinion. When you're in that situation, if you're facing a scene to have your say or get your way, you may not hold your ground unless you feel really strongly about something. Or maybe you never hold your ground. It takes a lot of energy. There could be a fear that people will yell or take reprisals against you. It can be scary. Or you might feel not good enough to push for your truth. So you might give in or give up and let the other person have their way. You may say, oh, sure, okay, do what you want, or something like that, because we really don't want to create that scene. And we're just like, oh, never mind. We don't compromise because that would mean telling people what you need and what you want, which is putting your power out there and saying, this is what I need. So once we give in, but how do we feel? You might feel disrespected or unloved or devalued or not heard. You might feel smaller or less than we felt before and powerless. We could lose respect for ourselves and the other people involved. So the next time we face that person, another decision or situation, we'll have less self-confidence. And right now, I'm going to go back over that power draining cycle so you really have a chance to let it set in so you recognize it when it shows up in your life. So first, you're faced with that person or decision or situation that you go, uh-oh, this is something that makes me feel uncomfortable. We may feel strongly about an opinion you have. You might want to say something or disagree with somebody or want to change the situation. Then you're facing a scene if you want to have your say or get your way. At least that's how it feels. It takes a lot of energy, and you might have that fear of yelling. You might feel scared that you're not good enough to push for your truth. And then, so maybe we give in or give up and let the other person have their way. We say, okay, do whatever you want. You don't compromise. You don't even put your ideas forward because you don't want the other person to go, no, what are you talking about? So you just sort of back off. But once we give in, how do we feel? Do you feel disrespected, unloved, or devalued, or feel, well, powerless? If you lose respect for yourself and the other person sometimes that's involved, you think less of them because they didn't allow you to have your say, but maybe you didn't even put yourself forward. So that next time, if you have to make that decision or face that person, or you're involved in a decision, you just kind of feel more powerless and you feel like you don't know what to do. You have less self-confidence. And you might even second guess yourself. So you want to step back and then take your power back when you see this power draining cycle happen. So wait a minute. Aha, there it is. Don't let that fear of people, how they'll respond, make you too indecisive so that you don't know how to step forward. We're going to give you some ideas on how to strengthen your resolve next so that you can actually stop the cycle and not let it control your life. So now we're going to talk about 5 ways to strengthen your resolve so that your decision to take the steps you need is not as difficult for you. You may have great intentions, but how do you get started to take your power back to say, this is my voice, this is what I want to say? So how do you strengthen that resolve? Well, first, you have to decide if it's worth the effort. Because sometimes it's a decision you go, I'm not going to bother. It's not something that I need to worry about. Let them have their way. I don't want to stand up for myself for this. Because it can take a lot of work, a lot of energy, and a lot of maybe fear of what they're going to say. So if it's worth the effort, you have to have that old-fashioned, what my mom used to call gumption or chutzpah, to be able to say, okay, I want it, I'm going to do it. How will you feel if you stop giving away your power? Will you feel more joyful, more peaceful, or more centered? I know I love myself more when I feel like I matter, because you do matter. So you have to decide if that particular person, decision, or situation is worth the effort when you face it. The second thing you can do to strengthen your resolve is to not let negative thought patterns bring you down. Because self-confidence is key. And I have another show on self-confidence, so you can listen to that one if you need to. So realize that you deserve to have your voice heard. Listen to how you talk about yourself and your thought patterns, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. If you're hearing yourself saying, oh, I don't know, maybe it's not important. Maybe what I have to say isn't good. Maybe this is stupid of me. Maybe I'm not good enough. No. If you hear those things, you'll realize that in that self-confidence show, I talk about being your own worst enemy. And I give you ideas on how to strengthen that self-confidence, because literally those negative thought patterns can really depress you, but we don't always hear what we're thinking. So you need to be more aware. So that's the second thing. The third way to strengthen your resolve is to just be real with yourself. Be honest. How honest can you be? Do you want to feel empowered? Do you want to be more at peace? Or to be able to make your own decisions? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want all those things because it seems too difficult. So be real with yourself. If you prefer to let other people make all the decisions and do everything, that's totally fine. That's on you to decide. But be honest so that you know if you actually don't feel guilty if you want to do that. Do it. Give it away. That's your choice. It's your being. Take your power back or don't. That's how you can decide too. Just be honest. Is it worth it in this situation? So number 4 is to be clear on what type of steps you need to take to start taking your power back. And that might help let some of that fear or uncertainty fade away. Especially if you can hold on to something that's a clear step for you. You want to make sure that you aren't worried all the time about, oh my God, what am I going to say? How will this person take it? We're going to give you some extra keys to empower yourself and some steps to take. But think about that so you know clearly, maybe with a certain person, it works a certain way, or a certain situation, it's better to do it one way than another. So think about all those things. And the 5th thing is decide what the consequences would be of not acting in your power. What will your life look like in a year or 5 or 10? Will it be the same? Will it be worse? Does it not matter at all if you don't get your way this particular time? Look at the circumstances and the relationships. See what you think. And now we're going to get into the 6 keys to empower yourself. So this may help with all of those things that I was talking about. The first key is to be aware that you're making choices all the time. Even the littlest thing. You're making choices on what toothpaste to use in the morning, whether to actually shower or not in the morning. People will appreciate it, but it doesn't mean you have to do it. It's a choice. Every single day you make I don't know about millions of choices, but thousands and thousands of choices. What to wear, which sock, do you wear matching socks, do you not? I mean, there's all kinds of things that you make choices on, even things you don't think about. If you always go the same way to work, when you're driving, if you drive to work, then it's always the same decision. It's the same choice, but maybe you turn a different way. That's a choice as well. Maybe you get stuck in a traffic accident or you're stuck in traffic because you did turn a different way. Those are choices. So take responsibility for your choices. How you choose to act is your choice, and that's your power. Even if your choice, like I said before, is letting other people decide for you in certain situations, be aware that you are making that choice. The second key to empower yourself is to realize that when others act, it's not your responsibility. You may be a nurturer and want to give and be there for everybody, and that's a lovely thing. Because without nurturers, we wouldn't have anyone to care for our elderly, we wouldn't have any doctors. We need people like that. But you don't need to feel guilty or take blame for other people's actions. It is not your responsibility. I mean, if you have a 3-year-old, obviously you want to be there for them and help them, and they're your responsibility in a different way. But once they become adults, you don't have to fix these people, whether they're friends or they're enemies, or they're your boss or your spouse. You cannot fix them or even change them by pushing your ideas on them. So realize that when others act, it's not your responsibility, but your choices, that going back to number 1, it is your responsibility. So your choice is your responsibility and theirs are theirs. It's the shortest way of saying that. The third thing, the third key is don't worry about what others think of you. I've did a little bit about this before. You definitely give your power away to people when you let their opinions and expectations drive you. It shouldn't be your do-all, end-all to what you think about yourself. Believe in you. I know sometimes we need validation. It's really nice to have it from the outside, but it shouldn't be necessary, because when we depend on validation from other people, we don't always get it. They may not say, "You did a great job. Oh, what wonderful food." They may just say, "Dinner, eat." If you're the cook in the house. I know I was not the cook in the house when I was married. My husband was. And I always appreciated it because I didn't want to cook. So what I'm saying is realize that the validation you need is not necessarily going to be there. So you need to appreciate it when you get it, but validate yourself to know that you are good at what you do, and you don't need other people to validate you, even if it is a nice perk, if you have someone who loves you and who'll tell you that. Especially a boss. They don't tend to validate you all that often unless you have a really great boss. Besides that, realize that your self-worth is not dependent on other people. This is something that you don't need to worry about. You don't need to depend on other people, like I said before, and you also don't need to be connected to that belief structure of the other person. It's just you. It's your belief about yourself. So the first 3 keys are: be aware that you're making your choices all the time and you need to take responsibility for them. Your choices. And realize that, number 2, you don't need to take any responsibility for anybody else's choices. You don't have to fix them. I don't care how much of a nurturer you are. The third thing to empower yourself is don't worry about what others think of you, because you don't really need to be there for those belief structures. That's in their mind. You believe in yourself. So don't depend on them to validate you. I want to give you a quote now. How would your life be different if you stopped allowing other people to dilute or poison your day with their words or opinions? Let today be the day that you stand strong in the truth of your beauty and journey through your day without attachment to the validation of others. That's from Life, the Truth, and Being Free by Steve, I think he pronounces his name Maraboli. 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 Anyway, I really love that quote, and I wanted to give that to you. The fourth one is getting a personal mantra. Now, that might sound a little different. It really does work if you look at what you struggle with. Go to the heart of the matter and then create your mantra. So I'll give you an example. Mine was that I always said I can't do something because I don't know how. And I looked at it and it was like, God, I do that all the time. I don't know how. But with Google and YouTube nowadays, you can't really say you don't know how because you have things at your fingertips that you may not have known before. So mine ended up being, I can't do it. Like I said, I don't know how. So I switched it over. My personal mantra is now, I can, so I will, since I know how, because I am. So I have no excuses, because my I can't turned to I can. And if I can, I guess I will, right? No excuses. Because now, since I know how, and I know how because I am a spiritual being and I can connect and get more information however I need it. So that's mine. I distilled it down to the least amount that I could so I could remember instead of having this really long-winded thing. So a personal mantra can really help you so that you can fall back on it when you have a problem. You can put it on a Post-it, carry it around in your purse or your wallet. You can put it on the mirror, whatever you need to remind yourself. Now, the fifth one is to know your strengths and to lean on them. Know if you're intelligent and the knowledge that you have. Know that you don't need to compare yourself to other people when you're trying to empower yourself. Know that you're connected and you know what you know. So lean on others when it makes you feel good, but learn to know the difference between friendship and then giving them your power, or loving someone and saying, okay, do whatever you want, when you really have the opinion and you know you want something different. Know your strengths when you get to that moment and then lean on them. And the sixth thing is to know your truth and what you really believe in. What is your integrity? Because you want to stay in that integrity and know, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right to me. I would feel really bad later if I didn't speak up. So when you're looking at that and you want to empower yourself and you want to look at these 6 keys, you want to go, if this is out of integrity with me, then I have to speak up. This is my decision right now. I need to speak up because this is totally not what I believe in. It's totally not my truth. It feels wrong. And if they're going to go out and do something, that's fine, but I don't need to be part of this. I can speak my truth if it's an us situation or decision that you need to make with other people. Then you need to speak up if it's out of your integrity. And now I'm going to talk about various ways you can decide how to take your power back. Now, you can like some of these things, maybe not others, but look at what feels right to you. The first thing is, if you don't need to decide immediately because you're not in somebody's presence, if you have a text or a voicemail, take some time. Don't respond immediately, even though they may want an immediate decision. Take a breath, take a moment, and shift your perspective. If you need to cry, scream, rant, or rave, if it's something that hurts you before you respond, then do it before you respond. I know that I have been known by shifting my perspective. I might pray or meditate, but sometimes I'm too upset. Somebody hurt my feelings. I'm not willing to do that yet. I will go ahead and rant and rave in a Word document, not in a response document, like an email. I open up a Word and I just type my little heart out saying, "You SOB," because I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm hurt. So I'll get all that out. And then I'm done. I close that Word document. I may not even save it. Usually I save it, but you don't have to. And then look at it from a third-party perspective. How do you feel after you get rid of all of those emotions that maybe got in your way? How do you want to respond to this person? How do you want them to respond back to you? That's one way to take your power back, by first getting rid of the emotions that are immediate and feeling like this is how I can respond in a loving way, a more loving way. The second thing you can do is set boundaries. You need to tell people what you will and won't tolerate. I know people say this all the time, but if you've never done it before, it can be a little scary, more than a little scary, because this can include things you need to set boundaries on, maybe your time, maybe a money situation, or space because they're asking you for something, or they want all kinds of things that might happen. But if you don't set your boundaries to speak your piece, people cannot read your mind. Sometimes you can say it and they still don't hear you. You might need to say it in a different way to set your boundaries. But you need to realize that people, even though your loved ones you think can read your mind, they cannot, usually. So you need to tell people when they act unacceptably around you. This is taking your power back. You can do it in a loving way, but you have to have clear consequences when people go out of the boundary line. You need to say something. You need to be willing to walk away in some instances, especially people that are sort of friends and they're not good for you. You need to be willing to do that. You never said anything. How can they know? I'm going to say that again. If you never said anything, how can they know? Now, if it's a new experience, you might want to start small if you've never set boundaries before. Maybe you start in a loving relationship where you want a little more time with the person, maybe a little less time with them. Maybe you want flowers once a month or a date night every Friday, even if you've been together a long time. So tell them, but tell them in a way that makes them feel good about it. Say, honey, you know what would really make me happy? Or maybe what would really make me feel loved is I'd love to spend more time with you. Do you think maybe we could have a date night, away from the kids? That would be really great, where we don't even talk about the kids. Let's just really reconnect. That would make me feel really good. Because people who love you want you to feel good. They want to know how to make you feel good, especially if you've been arguing because you haven't spoken the truth in a way that they can hear it. So that might be the way you need to do it. If it's a friendship, maybe you need them to honor the amount of time you speak because you have young children and they don't. Because I'm raising my hand, that was me. I was the bad person. I was not bad, but I was the one who didn't realize that my friend had 2 little kids. And I would call at random hours because I'm single and I just say, hey, I need to talk. And an hour later, she's going, I don't really want to answer the phone when you call because I need to do what I'm doing. She never said that to me, but that's what I came to realize. So maybe as the friend, you might want to say, I really love our friendship, but I want to be there for you, but I can't always talk when you call because sometimes the family needs me. I don't want you to think any less of our friendship or that I love you any less, but sometimes it's not a good time for me. Maybe I'll mention that at the beginning and you tell me how important it is. If it's an imperative thing, maybe it's an emergency. I want to talk to you. Somebody died or something horrible happened. But maybe I call you back if it's not that emergency situation, if it's not a good time for me. I mean, you have to have those chats. And I know it can be scary. So don't approach them in a way that makes them feel less or worthless. You notice I didn't say that in any of the ways of approaching someone. So don't fear a huge kickback or anger from this. You might have some people who react poorly, especially if you've never set boundaries before, but say your truth clearly and approach it from a loving place. As I said before, people cannot read your mind, and they might appreciate that roadmap if you do it from that loving place. When they listen and do what you ask, though, make sure you honor and acknowledge them for listening to you, because that way they're acting on it. I feel so loved when you do this. Or I love it so much when we have that date night. It feels so good to be able to just, it's sexy. And here we are again, just the two of us. Isn't that so wonderful? I feel heard when you do this. I mean, whatever you need to do, make sure that you honor them and you acknowledge them and thank them for doing what you ask them to do. And it's okay to keep working on it. It's going to be difficult at first if you're not used to it. So don't ask for too many things at once to the same person. And do not demand or do ultimatums or beg, because this is something that you wouldn't want to hear. You want to hear somebody that is coming from a loving place. You want to speak your truth and set boundaries as your new normal. And you don't want to allow yourself to be treated badly, right? So be willing to say no and be willing to say, hey, remember when I asked for that? That hurt when you just did that. Can we maybe revisit that thing that we were talking about? So don't change who you are for someone else. It's hard to sustain for long periods of time. You really can't do it. Sometimes I did that with a boyfriend. I was shifting to trying to make him happy and just didn't work. I wasn't who I was at heart and I felt off. Didn't feel right. So I want you to realize that you don't always have to not set your boundaries. You can do it, but you do it in maybe a sneaky way at first. Maybe you don't actually confront them, but find ways to do it in a loving way so you don't randomly go in an opposite direction and start demanding things. The next thing you might try is not to focus on people or situations that depress you and sap your energy. If it pulls you away from your joy and your happiness, I hate to say don't let them win, but don't let them drag you down. Because some people, look at your life. Who depresses you? If you have someone you roll your eyes when you see the phone call or you can't wait to shove them off, they may be someone that you don't want in your life or that you keep to a minimum. So realize that you can keep them as little as you want, and granted, if they're your parent or your spouse or your sibling, you may have a little more issue with doing this if they're your boss, but really look at it and see how you can adjust this so that you don't focus on those people. The next one that you might want to try is to realize that you have a choice to free yourself so that you go, you don't have to act, or you can act, or you can react. You can do whatever feels best to you. You don't always have to stand up for yourself and say, I want my power, because it may not be important. It may just be, this thing doesn't work. Maybe I'll talk about it, maybe I won't. Or maybe you might want to change up the way you respond to someone. But you can, as the next one says, pick your battles. But you have a choice. And the one thing I did want to say is that I know one time I was talking to somebody and they always reacted the same way to me, and it was always very defensively. And I thought, I'm kind of tired of dealing with this. I don't want to always get this defensive response. Maybe I need to act differently. You think? So I changed the way I reacted to them because I felt like they were pulling my power because I didn't want them to do what I wanted them to do. I just wanted them to react in a more loving way. So I ended up talking to somebody where instead of giving them advice or when they were asking for it, I said one time, what have you tried? And then I let them tell me. And I guess I was going into my life coaching mode when I said that. And then they got through all the things they tried and how it hadn't worked. I said, how did it not work? So we got through that. And then I got to the point where I just said, I really value you. I think you're so smart. You'll be able to come to a really good decision about this. I think you'll be able to do it. And they went, oh, you're not going to give me answers? And I thought, well, they never took them anyway, so why would I give you answers anymore? And so it went much calmer. So maybe if you always have someone with a bad reaction, you shift up the way you talk to them and you give them their power back by saying, hey, it's on you, or whatever you feel you might want to try, something a little different. And as I said too, pick your battles. If you're dealing with a difficult person, save your strength and your energy because they may not be all that important to you, or the things you're discussing and the decisions may not be all that important. Only you know what is important to you and what isn't. And the next thing to do is don't dwell on the past and what didn't work. Don't complain for hours to people about someone or some situation. You can do it the first time, but don't keep doing it over and over and over again. Because by doing that, you're giving that person you're complaining about the power because you're focusing on them, even if it's not the person you're talking to. If it's some other relative and you're talking to your spouse, you can complain to a certain point and say, this is a problem. How can we fix it? But after a while, you're just focusing on someone who is draining you. Learn from the past, but then find ways to let it go or shift and adjust the way you're responding to it. And lastly, forgiveness is a big one. Because when you're giving away your power, you're feeling sapped, your power and your energy is feeling just exhausted, you're letting it happen. So you need to forgive yourself for that. And people don't remember to do that. If you're holding a grudge or you're seeking retribution or revenge on somebody for something that they did, only hurts you. And I have a show on forgiveness too. So you can look back on that if that's something that you need. Because you're not saying it's okay what they did when you're forgiving yourself or someone else. You're just saying, I don't need to hold this in my heart anymore because it's a waste of time and energy. You're just punishing yourself for something that someone else did. They may not even realize that they're bothering you. It's not constructive for you. So learn from the past, like I said, and then figure out how you do want things to work. And then focus on the present and the future for yourself. Now, another way that you can empower yourself is to find someone to be on your side. This is really important for you. Someone who'll root you on or to hold you accountable. So maybe it's an unpaid person who's a friend, someone who's a loved one, a minister, someone in your spiritual community that you can talk to, who you can say, I really want to be able to speak up, but I'm a little nervous. I don't know how to do it. And they can help you. It may get to the point where there's a lot of limiting beliefs in. You need to talk to a therapist or a life coach and pay them. But literally, there's always someone out there to help you if you can't do that. If it's something where it's an abusive relationship and you can't take your power back because of that, and you're fear for your life, then by all means, get help. Get a therapist. Get someone who you can call that can actually take you out of the situation. And then later, when you need to work on moving forward, then fix your past with a therapist and move forward with a life coach. That's kind of the way I look at the difference. But also you may need someone to hold you accountable if you say you're going to take your power back and you're going to step into it so that you tell them what you're going to do. And they say, did you do it? And you go, oh, kind of like homework. You have to actually talk back to that person. And of course, if you're stuck and you need help, you might try a couple of other things. You might try tapping technique, EFT. It's called emotional freedom technique. You can do that alone or with someone that helped leading you through. And I always found it was easier to lead me through it because that's something that will help you get it out of your cells if you have any fear or anything. There's also kinesiology, hypnotherapy, past life regression or psychic readings. And then if you're heavy duty stuck, you definitely need to get to the therapist or the life coach. Only you know your own truth. Learn from your past and decide how you want to move forward. No one can really do that for you, but they can help you move through it. So when you take the responsibility for your own actions and ideas, that's when you are taking your power back because you do have that choice. Realize you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. You can take dominion over your own sovereignty, over your own being, because you are worthy and you deserve it. If you don't believe that about yourself, then believe that I believe it for you. I believe that you're worthy and that you deserve it, that you deserve to have your own power, to be in your own truth. And if you need help, I'm always here for you. I want to leave you today with two short quotes. One's kind of silly, and the other one is more profound. Theodore Roosevelt, one of the presidents, says, if you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a month. And isn't that true? Because most of the time, we bring everything on ourselves. And actually, for me, I believe that's pretty much all the time. Because we always have a choice how we respond and what our life looks like if we take our power back. And then Eleanor Roosevelt had some very wise words. She was the wife and a very strong woman and had her own power for sure. Was married to another president, FDR. She said, "Nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission." And I think that is an amazingly deep thing to say.
Thank you for listening to Connect to Joy. If you love the show, make sure you rate, review, and share this podcast. And subscribe so you never miss an episode. Contact the host, Carol DeChaine, with questions and comments, ideas for future episodes, or if you would like to become a guest. And remember, transformation is a journey and not an end destination. So be kind to yourself, because you are already enough to have the joyful, limitless life that you desire.